There was a stench of decay in the air, and the promise of awful horrors as night settled in. On the outskirts of town, my buddies and I discovered a carnival that reeked of malevolence and murmured promises of terror. As we drew near, the gaudy lights danced like ghostly fear fleas above the celebration. The air was thick with the sound of twisted laughing and the faint melody of a broken carousel. The carnival was a cacophony of opposites, with each ride and attraction being more horrific and sinister than the last. Like moths to a flame, we couldn't help but be attracted to the macabre. A grotesque sideshow with bearded ladies, contortionists, and a man with a mangled face was the first thing we saw. Their slitted pupils stared directly at us, as if they knew the mysteries of the carnival. As we explored farther, we came to a dark tent with faded signs advertising a freakish feast for the fearless. There was a chill in the air, and it smelled of ancient monsters and damp earth. The interior seemed like something out of a nightmare. Figures strained and writhed in bizarre expressions of pain and pleasure. There was an evil aura in the room, like the very air was crackling with it. A figure in torn robes appeared, his face masked by a mask of bone and sinew. His movements were gracefully alien, and his presence was like that of a sinister conductor. His eyes radiated a hellish fire as he drew us closer with each stride. He used cryptic language and low tones to weave a web of fear that made us quiver. He controlled all the pain and pleasure in this sick carnival. As the night progressed, we became entangled in a chain of horrors that exceeded our wildest nightmares. Our reflections were warped into hideous caricatures as we fumbled through a maze of mirrors. We were on a carousel that kept spinning faster and faster, threatening to throw us off the edge of the world. The House of Corpses, meanwhile, was a tourist trap advertising unfathomable horrors beyond its doors. The walls appeared to shut in on us as the odor of death filled the air as we stepped inside. There was a chamber full of spikes and shackles, a hall of mirrors that reflected our own terrified expressions, and a crypt inhabited by the restless souls of the damned. It was a plunge into madness, a trek to the bottom of the pit. And at its core was the masked guy, a spectral presence whose empty eyes stared down at us from on high. He plotted and directed our torture and led us to lunacy. The carnival seemed to twist and turn as we emerged from the House of Corpses, as if our excursion had warped the fundamental fabric of reality. When our worst fears became our reality, we realized we had entered a realm beyond the mortal coil. The ghostly melody of a synthesizer, a relic from a bygone era, echoed through the night on a current of static electricity. The night was infused with a nostalgic sense of foreboding. Our progress was marked by an increase in the macabre nature of the carnival's rides. Like some long-forgotten antique, the Ferris wheel groaned and squeaked as the moonlight glinted off its rusty spokes. It was a relic from a time long before, when kinder times gave way to something much worse. There was a dark undercurrent to the carnival's raucous laughing, as if it were a chorus of mockers poking fun at our entire existence. Now we were more than onlookers. We were actors in a nightmare that transcended comprehension. We came to a tent, decked out in neon lights, with a towering figure in leather and spikes standing sentinel at the entrance. His eyes shone with a maniacal intensity as he invited us closer. This was the domain of the neon nightmares, an area of the carnival where the regulars danced in a delirious stupor to the pulsating glow of the neon lights. The music's constant pace stifled our ability to think clearly. Substituting it with a more visceral, throbbing rhythm, we let ourselves go and danced, our bodies swaying to the rhythm of the music as we became immersed in a sea of neon lights and frantic shadows. As the night progressed, we were sucked deeper into the carnival's core, a place where dreams and nightmares collided to create a bizarre tapestry of dread. We happened upon a funhouse, its kaleidoscopic hues and winding hallways evoking an age of extravagance. The interior walls moved and twisted as though they had a life of their own in response to our presence. Our grotesquely stretched limbs and warped features were reflected back at us in the mirrors. The hall's destruction was a tribute to the carnival's skill at manipulating visitors' perspectives. There was also the Tunnel of Terror, an attraction that promised to plunge us deep into the underworld. A plummet into the abyss was before us as we clambered into the rickety carriages. The walls appeared to close in on us as we careened into the tunnel. the air getting colder and denser the further we went. Insanely distorted shadows twirled and contorted themselves around the walls. The sudden reverberation of a shriek down the tunnel sent a shudder of fear through our bodies. As the dark ride continued, we clutched to the sides of the cart, our eyes wide with terror. The ride ended just as abruptly as it had started. We walked out, our balance off from the sensory overload. The carnival had taken a bit of our hearts and left an unforgettable scar of fear in its place. It was as though the whole essence of the 1980s were sewn into the fabric of the carnival as we emerged from the tunnel of terror. It was both a haven of fond memories and a terrifying nightmare, a world where ancient ghosts and modern monsters coexisted. A profound quiet descended upon the carnival as if the night itself had stopped breathing. Someone else had joined us. From the darkness, figures emerged, their identities concealed by masks depicting twisted grins and empty eyes. They approached us with a predator's grace and an inhuman appetite. We scurried to get away from the carnival personnel, but they were relentless. They danced together with a sinister rhythm that was unsettling to see. Their giggling pierced the silence, a cacophony of insanity that resounded in our heads. Slowly but surely, the night snuffed out the cries of my friends as they fell. They collapsed to the ground, their bodies broken and motionless, and the carnival employees swooped down on them like vultures drinking their blood. It turns out they were vampires of the night. My pulse was racing, and the echoes of their laughing followed me as I raced. My breathing was erratic as I made my way through the winding passageways. The atmosphere of the carnival was oppressive and felt like it was closing in on me. As I approached the carnival's fringes, the moon was low in the sky, creating long, twisted shadows across the empty grounds. I cast a backward glance. The night's horrors seared into my brain like a nightmare I'd never shake. The silence was suddenly broken by a deep, guttural voice. It was he, behind the mask, who ran this sinister fair. He faced me, his eyes glowing with an evil radiance. "You've proven yourself worthy," he said in a hissing, serpentine tone. To quote the welcome mat, "You shall be welcomed among us." After saying this, he turned and walked off into the night. I took a few shaky steps ahead, feeling the weight of the night on my frail, unstable legs. As I left the carnival, an odd sense of acceptance washed over me. The carnival was no longer a terrifying destination. Rather, it had become a safe haven, a place where the unknown could be explored via the mysteries and secrets of the night. Once I was outside of town proper, though, I had an epiphany, an unavoidable reality that I could no longer ignore. I was a member of the carnival staff and an actor in this sickening farce. It was then that I realized I belonged at the Carnival of Shadows alongside the other animals of the night. For you see, it was all an initiation and the sacrifice I had to make to be an immortal according to the vampire code. As frightened as I was seeing everything unfold right in front of me for the first time ever, I had a breakthrough. I felt like I finally belonged somewhere. I retreated, looking back at the faraway circus, content in the knowledge that the shadows were now my true home. As I faded into the darkness, the carnival remained still, its secrets hidden away under layers of warped memento mori and long-forgotten horrors. It was a domain of shadows and specters, a carnival of shadows where dreams and reality blurred into one another.